All right. Well, hi, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to our Fresh Look series. So good to be here with all of you. And yeah, so this is I love this series because I really love the word fresh. And there's so much that I think we can see if we just look at something that, especially something that maybe we think we already know a lot about because we're so used to it. We live our whole lives with like ideas about time and other things, but just take a fresh look and see what that might give us. Um, you know, in a way, I feel a little I feel a little mischievous in that I almost feel like I'm going to pull a bait and switch. And because actually, when I think about a fresh look at time, I'm thinking also about timelessness and what that is. But regardless of that, I think the thing that has been on my mind for a while and in my work around this is how often I see people, and myself included, sort of really living not in the present moment. Or let me put it another way, we're living in the present moment, but we're thinking so much about what just happened. What happened today, what happened yesterday, what's happened my entire life, things like that. And then taking those thoughts and projecting them into the future, but not necessarily seeing that that's what I and we are doing, and how much either stress or suffering that brings us. And, I feel like often if we say we're struggling with time, even if we feel like we have more to do than there is time in a given day, that the feeling of stress or suffering isn't really coming from that. It's coming from, our thoughts about what this means for our future, and then we're feeling that in the present. So even with that little bit, I think whenever it occurs to you, it's something I've been catching, partly because I work with other people and I see it a lot, and I catch it in myself as well. Um, to talk about the past as if it's still happening. For example, things like I've been anxious my entire life, or I've always been a worrier, or um, one of the things that come across a lot in my work is, I was doing so well, and then last week I had a panic attack. But if you take a moment to kind of look at that and what's really happening now, even if the panic attack or whatever your experience would be of last week was really bad, really, you know, legitimately not a good time, just to put it bluntly. Um, in the current moment, it's no longer real except in our thinking about it. And sometimes it can feel a little, I feel like I have to be a little careful in pointing that out because, you don't want to dismiss someone else's suffering. But at the same time, if we can see just a little bit that a lot of our suffering around time has to do, it's not time, it's thought. It really is thought because we can only remember the past. It can come alive in thought in the present, and we can only project into the future through our imagination. And then that seems to come alive in our thought. And if we just get a little bit of that, because, I've only seen a little bit of it, it's really helpful because, like, in a moment, you can kind of drop out of that feeling of suffering because you see it's not happening. and you're just sort of responding to the memories and the thoughts. And to me, that feels a lot more easy. So those are some thoughts I have on time, but this hour of freshness is not just about me and my thoughts, but I wanted to open it up with that. And then I wanted to ask my dear friend Kate if she had anything to say about anything. It doesn't have to be what I just said, but anything that's occurring to you about the subject.
I love this subject because I'm so unclean on it. And so when we talked about, who was going to kind of start off the call today and what the subject was, it's perfect that this is my subject because I'm so unclean on this and would love for myself to take a fresh look at that and see something new around it. And, one thing that occurred to me, Tom, while you were sharing was that in in the past, I don't know how many of you know this, but I used to teach high school, and you've got, I don't know, 150 students, right? And I was a single mom at the time, and like I actually valued my ability to spin my lists and multitask and to be not basically not present because there was so much to do, right? And so I actually valued this in myself. Like I can do so many things all at one time, right? And be paying attention and collect cell phones and, be a mom and do all these things, right? Like that meant something at the time, which is really interesting because I didn't realize until things started to slow down that my busy mind spinning lists and multitasking, I was creating an experience of pressure and stress. And that was like a baseline that was very normal for me until you start to slow down and then it doesn't make any sense anymore, right? Now I still do it all the time, creating that feeling and that experience of pressure and stress. And that's why I'm really excited for all of us together to look at this in a new way. And while most of the time I don't see it, coming back to an empty space, an unknown space, is so valuable. If I'm willing to not know anything about time. So, we would love to hear anything that you guys have seen or not seen. Even that's kind of how I started it. It's like, this is how little I've seen on this subject. But we love to hear from you guys if anything has shown up for you around the subject of time. And you can unmute and speak up or raise your hand, however you want to do it. Yay, bang.
Hi. Uh, I hope my mic is on. Just when Tom was talking also about the past, just something that I often remember about the or that I comes up when I talk in the 3P context about the past is from a book I read where the author and he teaches I think it was about cognitive bias or some book, and the author tells the story where how he had the choice of going to university either like locally or he could teach at Stanford, but Stanford was far away, and so he argued with his mother like he wanted to go to Stanford, and she was like, no, please stay home, and he's like, and but I finally I just took the step and I went to Stanford, and it was the best choice of my life, and then he said that at least that was a story I told everyone for years. And then after a few years, I talked to my mother and asked us like, why didn't you want me to go to Stanford? It's like it like even now in hindsight, it seemed like such the obvious choice. And she was like, no, no, you didn't want to go to Stanford. I finally convinced you. And she had like letters from the time that they exchanged. And it was like the complete opposite way around. Like he didn't want to go to Stanford. He wanted to stay home. And so he remembered the complete opposite. And when I read that, and also in the context of the three principles, I so often ask myself, how much time of my life have I spent being angry, ashamed, or guilty about things that didn't actually happen? That's like how much of how much of my past isn't my past. They're just completely made up stories, maybe even where what I think I did, I didn't, but you know, because it seemed like such a story where the an obviously intelligent guy who teaches at Stanford should remember such a simple thing, whether or not it was him or his mother wanting him to go to Stanford. But it just shows like how spotty and faulty our memory is and how much time we can spend like feeling guilty, and how much we can be in our head, and that our past is really just what Tom said, just made out of up out of our own thoughts, and then if you go the other direction in the future, I mean, how much time do you spend worrying about things that never happen, and that you can't influence anyways, and even though I still do that, I sometimes I manage to remind myself that there is only this present moment, and the past is some made up construct, and the future is something I can't like that I don't know about anyways. It's so how much of my future has been completely different from what I ever imagined.
Nice. That's very well said. Um, you know, recently I've been just reflecting on the fact that, we've probably all had, I don't know how many moments in our lives, if we can even break them down to moments, like billions of moments from when we were born. And yet our mind will go back and take a handful of them, basically take a handful of those moments and put them together and say, this is who I am. And there's something about the power of our minds and our thoughts to make it look true, so true. Even to the extent where you can remember something that it's questionable, debatable whether two people can even agree on whether it happened. But just when we think of ourselves in the moment and think of especially, maybe the nice things we think about ourselves, who cares? We can have those. But if we're thinking about this is who I am, as we often do, in a way that looks so real and so true, and yet we're just taking a handful of the billion moments that we have and selectively, um, for whatever reason, ignoring the total opposite. All the evidence that we could find for that we're not that person. We're actually a pretty decent, um, thoughtful, nice, kind, happy person. That's true. That's true too. We could go back and find all those and put those together in a story. Um, but I think that's really curious. That's been like a fresh insight about the power of our minds to make something look so true and so real. And that can start, like as we're doing now, that can start to be called into question. And if that brings you like a little relief, or even better than that, brings you back to your nature of well-being and happiness, all the better. So Bernie.
Tell a little story. 20 years ago, I'm just noticing as I'm saying 20 years ago, that's time. About 20 years ago, I was talking with a work colleague who was quite a bit younger than me. And I can't remember what the conversation before it was, but he goes, "Well, how old are you?" And I told him, and he was almost shocked. And just as a throwaway line, by the way, this is a visual joke. So if you want to just take a moment and look at the camera for the next 30 seconds, great. I said to him, "Well, time doesn't exist." And he goes, "What?" And I said, "Well, the past, where is it?" This is the visual part. Oh my God. He looked behind him, in case someone can't see the camera. He looked behind him for the past. And it just blew his mind that the past is not something that exists in a way that we can actually see it and touch it. I mean, the past did exist, but it doesn't exist. The future will exist, but it doesn't exist in this moment. And at the same time, we have time. I see time as like it's a really useful construct. Oh my God, at times, I don't want to go overboard on saying time, but it is a really useful construct at times. If I want to be on this call, it's good to know what time we're meeting at and make sure I'm here at the right time. But at the same time, I think, see, I'm doing it again. That was unintentional. At the same time, see how much time has seeped into our language. That's what I'm just realizing as I'm talking. Just like any tool, I'm thinking of time as a tool. Just like any tool, we can use it against ourselves. And like this is where I don't know if Kate and I do it the same way, but like time seems so real to me. I'm running late, and I feel like time should expand, but it doesn't. And maybe it does, but I'm just not realizing it. And I'm people will say I'm habitually late, only like a few minutes late. I'm often habitually late. By the way, those are two words that are both very connected to time. For things, and then when it's important, I will show up on time, usually. And I've seen that even when I'm running late, that still have a choice, because that's a moment where I can experience being in the moment, or just go, I'm running late and I've got all this story, and what if I'm late, what's the impact going to be? And it's helpful to take that into account. But in that moment, I'm going to be late. I might as well just enjoy the experience to the best of my ability. And that's something I want to notice more. Not to use time as a way of beating myself up. So those are some thoughts that came to me around time. It seems so real and yet doesn't even exist.
I had a quote that I just quickly grabbed to share. I've had an inquiry with time, and even was moved to write a story about a woman who lived outside of time, because I wanted to know what that would be like. And so I didn't know, right? Like, what would it be like to write about this character? And what does it mean to even be outside of time? So the very first scene, I saw her at a bus station, and she's sitting there with this woman who's been kind of assigned as her caretaker, because the world assumes that this woman who has no sense of time cannot take care of herself. And she's sitting there at the bus, and the woman who's the caretaker says, Nadja, that's her name, why are we waiting for the bus? And she says, yes, we're waiting for the bus. That's what we're doing. And the woman asks, like, oh, but where are we going? And she says, looks confused, like, I'm here. This is the bus station. And then they get on the bus, which the woman knows how to do somehow, even though she has no sense of having been on buses before, but she knows how to be on the bus. And when it's time to get off, the woman knows what stop to get off at, even though she didn't even know where she was going. And it was fascinating to have this experience from inside of a character. And she's so calm. This woman is so, she doesn't worry. She's never hurried. She's confused by other people's distress about so many things. And it was an adventure to discover how she became that way. And I think it came from a sense I had of time, which I sometimes have, and I was thinking about, I was feeling it actually sometime during when Tom was speaking, that so everything is now. It's not a point in time. Now is not a point on a timeline with the future in front of it and the past behind it. It is an infinite, timeless now. And time is this experience that moves through it. Time is the experience that moves through me, and we might call that thought. We might call that energy. We might call it a movement of, I don't know, time is like a form of thought. And this is the quote that I love. I can't claim to know what it means or what the author meant by it, but I love it. And this is from, I'm just going to pronounce it and get it wrong. Be like Jorge Luis Borges. Someone will correct me someday. And he wrote this: time is the substance I am made of. Time is a river which sweeps me along, but I am the river. It is a tiger which destroys me, but I am the tiger. It is a fire which consumes me, but I am the fire. There's a feeling in that for me that speaks to, oh, time is not what I think it is at all. It's a mystery, an experience that can be long and seem to expand forever, and can feel so fast that I'm left longing for it to stay. And neither is true. I'm curious what questions about time may be coming up for you, or what would you like to see more about? Or what are you seeing or feeling? Hi, Noor. Can you unmute yourself? I can ask you.
Outside. Hey, I'm just stepping outside to speak. Hi everyone. I was really moved by the poem you shared, Stephanie, and I hope that you can share it in the chat or a follow-up email, or I'll email you individually. I just found that it brought me to stillness, and it was such an interesting inquiry for me to hear. Sorry, this is probably better. For me to hear about this experiment kind of that you did of like inhabiting this character and having the sense, and it aligns with me because I haven't used an alarm in years, and I just like I feel like I have trust in my biological clock. Like I'll still use it if I'm going to the airport just because there's some fear. Like there's some fear like what if I miss my flight and it's an early flight, but it's only out of just like reassurance. But I do have this sense that we've lost contact with our natural rhythms, and our natural rhythms, like the character, just knows. But there was something about the poem you shared that really, I don't know, it stayed with me. It was like the river, and then the time sweeps out of the river, the fire, like that's the substance. And I'm just sitting with that. I don't know what that means right now. It's just brought me to stillness. And I love that inquiry of like, what would we be like outside of time? My experience is that time creates a lot of stress, linear attention. And also my experience is that what I love when I travel is that I don't schedule a lot, and it frees me up and expands me. And I don't think it's specific to traveling. It's specific to me creating a lack of schedule and an openness to discover. And so that's present for me.
Mm-hmm.
And the second thing I want to say before I wrap up is I actually really like the story the gentleman shared earlier about Stanford and like stories in the past. And I was like, I found it inspiring. So whoever that was, because my video was had my phone in my pocket, I really enjoyed that. Yeah.
That was Banked. We give him a big thank you for that one. Yeah. It's interesting, right, to look at, can it really be how we schedule ourselves that makes us feel that time pressure? I used to think that it was, And when I saw that, and I knew that I didn't need pressure to do things, I stopped scheduling myself, left open spaces in my calendar, because when I looked at open spaces in my calendar, I felt, ah. And when I looked at all the stuff on my calendar, I felt, no. But if I just took it off in a moment and put it back on, if I booked up every spot on my calendar right now, would it change anything? It's like if I'm using Google Calendar, it's blocks on a screen. It means nothing. But I make it mean something. I make it mean, oh, I have so much to do. There's no time to squeeze more in. How am I possibly going to do all this? And what's really happening? My mind is going with the million things I'm thinking about that look like they have something to do with what I've put on my calendar and what I've scheduled for myself, but they cannot possibly. We could blank it right now. Would it go away? Maybe, maybe not. Depends on what you're thinking. And it's fascinating because if we couldn't worry about time, what if you couldn't? What if you had no concept of time, but you had things on your calendar? You had things that need doing. Could you be stressed about it? When I started to catch on to this, I saw that I would completely let go in a call like this. I didn't need to think about time because I would often set myself little alarms reminding me when I needed to be somewhere so I could just be where I was. And then my alarm would go off and I would like, rush to the next thing. And then I would let go. And I was like, wait a minute. Why am I rushing between? Do I need that? And the more I started to see that I didn't need that to show up where I needed to be, the more I stopped doing that. And it was pretty natural because it just didn't make so much sense anymore.
You know, the thing that's a, oh, go ahead, Michaela.
Hello.
Hello.
There's, so many little things that are showing themselves. But, in speaking about in the beginning of my day, I will look at my calendar and for any appointments, I will, because I don't like any binging on my phone. It's always on silent unless I'm waiting for a call or something from someone. So I will set reminders for whatever time I think I need to prepare for that particular event. I'll set them so I can just relax and just get into what I need. And then I'll get a notification with enough time for me to do what I need to do to get on to the next thing. And when it is an outside event, I will follow that. But when it is something that I put in my calendar for me to do, I often ignore it because, well, the because part depends on the on the moment, on what's coming up in the moment, what I'm thinking about that thing. And then what happens is there's this pressure because I keep saying yes to doing things for others or things that I think I should do, and maybe some things I want to do too. But now there's this stack of things because I've been ignoring the time that I've blocked out. It's really muddy. And I like, Kate, your word of unclean, because it's just like, yeah, dirty thoughts. Dirty thoughts about time. They're just so cloudy. They're so muddy. And I have a lot of dirty thoughts about time, I notice. And then I see it's like, oh, well, that's not true because that's the past, me saying that. So it's like in this moment, well, even in this moment is, there is no moment. It's an eternal moment. You can't even point to it because it disappears as soon as you point to it. So there's a lot of mind frickery going on in there.
God, thanks so much. I love that. What you shared. So back in October, we did a retreat. It was Tom and Bernie and Steph and I. And Tom and I were running around doing errands and picking up things. And we had a meeting, like a 3 p.m. meeting in St. Pete. And I was like, we're not going to make it on time. And he's like, no, it'll be the perfect time because that's when we're going to get there. And I was like, my head just like, and I'm still thinking about, no, it's the perfect time because that's when we're getting there. It can't be any other way, no matter what I'm thinking. And it was so simple. So thanks, Tom, in that. Because it can't be any different than what's happening in the present moment. Love that.
I forgot all about that, so thanks for reminding me. And kind of on that theme of I guess what we both felt with that, the thing that like has really helped me with worry, because the thing with like feeling there's not enough time for things becomes, well, there's going to be some implication if something doesn't get done, like some bad implication. And that to me is that's the feeling of stress. Oh, something bad's going to happen. But the thing that's really, and that's like the nature of worry for me. Something bad's going to happen in the future. And bad can be anything from like catastrophic to mildly annoying, right? So there's a big range of that. And the thing that's really helped me is just reflecting on the fact that, and I think everyone, I might, even ask you to think of this for yourself. Like, have you ever worried about something happening that was going to be maybe at least unpleasant or maybe even really bad? And then it actually happens, you know, and then you find that you actually navigate it much better than you thought you would. In other words, it turns out like it happens, but then And maybe you feel it, but then it's not that bad. Or you get over it, or you see in the moment, how did I ever, you figure out how to deal with it in the moment, like the woman on the bus in Stephanie's story. Have you had that experience of something happening and you deal with it much better than you thought? Now maybe not always, but maybe sometimes. And so that really helps me because, this is where it sort of drops back into the unknown. It's like not only do I not know what's going to happen, like in reference to something I can worry about, I don't know whether or not it's going to happen. But then I get into this space, like, wow, I don't really know how I'm going to deal with it. And when I'm in that space, I feel in the present moment, I can deal with, and that's just a word, deal with. You can use whatever word works for you, that in the present moment, I can sort of deal with or handle what it feels like to worry about something happening. Does that make sense? Like in the moment, it's like, oh, okay, I'm worrying about this. Basically, I can say, I'm worrying about this, but I'm okay. Right? I think we can experience that. But then I realized that same thing that just allowed me to do that, to sort of deal with or be okay in the midst of the worry, that's the same thing that's going to help me if that thing happens. Does that make sense? So like if I'm saying, oh my God, let's say I guess I'm afraid of some bad financial news, which I'm sure we've all have experienced in our life, right? Like, what if this happens? How am I going to deal with it as part of the present moment suffering? But when I realize I can deal with the present moment suffering, that same capacity that's in me to do that is what's going to help me deal with that thing that happens if it actually happens. So it's the same power. And I've just had like a tiny, tiny little experience of, oh, that's what's going to help me. It just helped me now. I've got it. And um, I hope you don't mind, Jamie. I saw you nodding a little bit, so I don't know if you saw something in that, if you want to share anything.
I just think it was like what we were talking about last night, just that trusting and seeing that capability is inside of us and that we always have access to it. And yeah, we sometimes forget, but when we come back to the moment, we know like, oh, that same thing that allows me in this moment will be there for me in that future moment that doesn't exist yet.
Yeah. Isn't that great to see? Like I think I just saw that in the past couple of months. Like I never knew that. Never knew that. And maybe for some of you that might feel kind of new too. So congratulations if it helps. Or maybe some of you have known it all your lives, right? I don't know, but yeah. Nancy.
Yeah, many times I just notice that I have this like flood of just gratitude for this understanding of life, of the three principles, because I know in my younger years, I spent a lot of time in worry, as if that was going to make things okay. And then, looking back in my life, I can say, wow, if anybody told me that I was going to be here, there, everywhere, and somehow it would all work out. Once in a while there'd be a snowstorm and you didn't get where you were supposed to go. But the principles to me really have helped me so much, even with what I'm seeing as a lot of chaos in this country. That how things could go it's like I don't have any control over that. And I do feel this like amazing kind of sense of, wow, there is a time when I would have been, doing something crazy, I guess. Um, and I just feel like, well, I made it this far and I'm going to make it the rest of the way. And it might not be as I might think it's going to be, but I just feel, there's just amazing things that would really disturb me are not disturbing me. And so it's not out there that's not disturbing me. It's just the thinking about it has been diminished, yeah, by the understanding of the principles. And so that's, kind of what I was wanting to share. And in listening to this too, of just around time, is that for the most part, I mean, this is an international call, so people are all over, the planet in different cultures. But in our culture in the United States, or certainly Western culture, there's just such a fixation on the tool and not the gift. The tool is that we can think, but that we over fixate on that. And so even with time, time is really just a tool, and somebody said that already, and that using it to my advantage in support of being here in this world, and just noticing what I do and noticing what I don't. But mostly I wanted to share just that sense of like, wow, this is amazing that this is not, I'm not in a twirl, just ready to whatever. Yeah, a feeling like somehow I got to grab the reins, and it's like, no, I don't have to grab the reins. Anyway, I don't know if I'm making sense, but that's just my feeling of such, wow, it's such a difference. Anyway.
I'm just thinking, I don't think I've thought about time this way before, but time is a gift in that I can see that the way I felt before is not the way I feel now. And the way I feel now will not be the way I feel later. And I can think of time in that sense of, oh, this too shall pass, because it all does. And that only happens because of the sense of time that we have. It seems to me, I mean, I can use that either way, right? Like I can beat myself up with that same thing, or I can go, oh, wow, this is here, and sometime it won't be. Isn't that cool? I had a really fun experience of time a couple weeks ago. I was in the Reflect program, and we were exploring focus. And I found on the New York Times website, there was a focus experiment you could participate in. And it was a blue painting. And the focus experiment was to focus on this painting for 10 minutes. And so I said, okay, guys, we're going to do this. So for 10 minutes, we all looked at this blue painting on the screen. And I will tell you that the first 3 minutes for me were excruciating. It was like, oh my God, how am I going to do 10 minutes? This is crazy. I can't. I was like squirming and thinking so much. And I don't know what happened, but at some point, oh, I do remember the point. I was like trying to focus on it. I was like, how can I focus on this? It's so boring. How can I focus? What am I doing? It was a struggle. And all of a sudden it occurred to me well, what if you just be with the painting? I went, oh, that feels better. And so I started being with the painting instead. And I don't even remember thinking about time or having a sense of it. It seemed to go so quickly after that. And I was like, how could that be? How could it be that 3 minutes was like an eternity and the remaining 7 was bam, done and felt good? What? It was amazing to wonder about that and to see how bendy time really is. Because if it is made of thought, we're creating it. We're creating the experience of time that we have, whether we are aware of it or not. And when I don't think about it, it tends to just feel like it expands. There's less thinking. I feel like I'm here. We call that being present, right? It's just, it feels rich. It doesn't always feel fast. It doesn't always feel slow, but it feels like spacious to me.
I want to come back to something Michaela said. Michaela used the words mind trickery, and I'm seeing that more and more. You know, you just gave a perfect example, Steph, of mind trickery. This first 3 minutes felt like an eternity, and the next 7 minutes went by in a flash. That is the kind of trick that our mind can play on us. Or someone mentioned earlier about how the memory wasn't actually what happened. Another trick that our mind can play on us. And just for me, it's like I've just become clearer and clearer that I can't rely on my thinking. Clearly, I can't. It doesn't get time wrong. It doesn't get memories wrong. Sure where to go with that. My God, I can't rely on my mind. Oh my God, I'm screwed. Oh, there's now my mind's supporting me in my analysis of the mind. So it's, oh my God, it just makes me sure that I don't judge the mind too much. Wow. I don't know. I'm just making that up. But I can spin myself into using up my valuable time. Or I could just be. Some people know here, today's my birthday. You know, what does a birthday do? It marks the passage of time. Another year, another trip around the sun. Thank you. Oh, wow. Yes. I'll take all the thank you. And yet it's just such an artificial construct. Like it just, you know, like this season a year ago, it was another year that I celebrated, but like when I focus in on this day, we've created this calendar that we all stick to. Most of us do. And therefore, this is the day that we recognize it's my birthday. Yeah, it's another thing we've made up. And I remember meeting someone not long ago about one of the things she would say is that every day is my birthday. I was like, oh, it was just she had the attitude of like, it's my birthday today. She wouldn't declare it very much. It was more of an internal state for her. Because I notice sometimes when I'm in my birthday spirit, it feels very uplifting. But sometimes like, oh my God, I've got so many Facebook messages to respond to. Right. So it might be nice to enjoy my birthday without a ton of Facebook messages I feel like I have to respond to. Not that I have to, of course. But the other thing about getting older is it really helps me value more and more the importance of now, because that's all I have. I could be dead in 10 minutes and I could be alive for another 20, 30, I don't know how many years, 40, 50, maybe 100 years, according to some people. But I don't know. I just don't know what it is. So, but all I have is now. And it's just allowed me to embrace this moment more when I'm not when my mind isn't playing tricks on me and I'm caught up in some mind game. And it's also, I've let go of, so worried. Did I worry about death? I don't know, but it's like, okay, well, I know death's going to happen at some point. I seem to be more okay with it. And that feels very freeing. And I was going to say, knowing that death will, and it's death of the body, not, I don't know what happens to this being part of me. I guess I'll find out. That sounds like an adventure. But I'll wait. I'll wait till it's time. I'm not gonna hurry that along. I was walking on the beach this morning with a friend of mine, and it was just exploring about what this life offers. This life is eternal. This moment is eternal, and it's neutral. And yet I can paint whatever I want on it. I can create a world of chaos with my mind. I can create a world of peace and joy. That's the tricks our mind can play. And with that, I'm saying my time is up.
Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for being here and sharing and listening, and people say hi to anyone who's watching on the recording right now or in the future, some future now. But it's so good being here with you. We'll be back again next month with a fresh new topic, and you can always email us if you have ideas for topics. And
And we do have a list of topics. It's not like
oh, we
we're,
do.
yeah, we just haven't decided what one is going to be. And
So many topics, not enough time.
How many more time topics can we have, Tom?
Maybe we can fit them all into one. But yeah, but thanks for being here. Feel free to share this with someone who you think might want to come next time or in the future. And and hope you have a great time the rest of your day.
Happy birthday, Bernie.
thank you.
Happy birthday, Bernie. Bye, everyone. Thank
Happy
you.
birthday to
Thanks for being here.
you.